Jeremy, aka Chip, over at the Diecast Sheriff YouTube channel, is hosting the Tonka Build-Off Invitational on January 20th, which happens to be his birthday. I went rummaging around through my diecast cars and found this Tonka. It's a Maisto Tonka casting. If you look at the bottom, it actually has Maisto listed down there. And I thought, well, at least I have a Tonka handy. So I decided to go with this one. I had already drilled it out at this point. Now I'm taking it apart. The hook portion also screws in. It came that way. It wasn't, I didn't have to tap that or anything. That was already a piece that screwed in. So it has a metal body, plastic base, plastic hook, some of the ugliest wheels known to mankind. You see that lettering on the side of the hook section there. I ended up using dry erase markers to take that off. First thing that needed to happen was the wheel swap. There was no way those wheels were going to stay on this, so I went to a couple larger castings that I had. I ended up using, oddly enough, the front wheel set from each of the castings. That just happened to be what worked size-wise. And the wheels roughly matched each other. So I decided I'd go with those. I did try and fit the... Naturally, I wanted to put the fatter back tires in there. But they just wouldn't work. And it wasn't something where you could necessarily make them work because of the way the casting hook area is on the casting. I would have had to lose a lot of the detail in the bed of the rig. So the narrow ones worked fine. Oddly enough, the front ones fit perfectly. I didn't need to cut down the axle at all for those. And on the larger ones for the back, they're the kind that the axles screw in and are also glued in, when they make them. And the easiest thing for me to get those out, really rather than forcing them too hard, is to use some of the Plastistruct cement that, welds plastic. And I just kind of wet it with that on one of the ends of the axle. Let it soften that plastic, and then it pulls apart a lot more easily. The casting was a little rough in spots. It was play-worn, but there were casting lines. So I had to clean all of that out of there. This project ended up being a learning experience in two different ways. And I'll get to that later. But I just had to clean the casting up a little bit first. Eventually, after I had it all cleaned up, I hit it with some primer. There were some areas that were still a little rough, so I hit them with some spot putty. There you can see the spot putty. And then had to clean that up, which was just a little sanding. Once I have basically the casting the way I want it, I went over it with Rustoleum Gloss White. And then I did a lot of the detail. There's some of the paints that I used. I used a combination of Vallejo and Army Painter paints for the detail. There it is, partially done. And I just would do parts and then let it dry and do some additional detail and let it dry. And kind of worked my way through it. I did a lot of that off camera because it is very tedious work. And it isn't pretty to see me doing it. There's some guys that it's enjoyable to watch them paint detail. I don't think I'm one of those yet. There's a lot of kicking and screaming that goes on. Got out my favorite Sharpie markers to do some of the detail on the base. It was actually a nice little casting. There was an incredible amount of detail on it, particularly like in the bed of the rig itself. It was just really interesting. So for something that you think of as a Tonka, when I think Tonka, I don't think detail, I think strength, that kids can beat the hell out of them and they still survive. But I guess it's the Maisto connection. There you see it with a lot more detail. The two things I learned on this, one, that I was curious about the Minwax. I had heard that it can yellow when you spray it over white, and I did actually learn that on this. You can't see it that well on this, but it actually did yellow in some areas. And I guess that's probably true of a lot of clears, but this one, some areas where it was a little heavy when I put it on, did yellow a little bit. If I looked hard, I could see it. And I think the first time I heard about that, I think was Xavier over at Diecast Show Customs. That was one of the first ones I heard mention that. The other thing I learned on this one was the Gundam markers. The Minwax clear can make them bleed. I had that happen as well. And so I had to do some touching up on this to kind of clean that up. It wasn't areas where there was a channel. Usually I use the Gundam markers to like darken panel lines. In this case, I did panel lines, but I also did some other areas with the Gundam markers. And those areas where they weren't, in a way, trapped by the casting, they actually bled a little bit, which I was kind of surprised by that. Kind of disappointed. But all in all, I hope you like how this one ends up here at the end. I'd like to thank Chip for doing this build off, and wish you a happy birthday, Chip. And here's where it started. And you'll see where the casting ended up. Man, those are some ugly wheels. I'd also like to take a moment to just say, Chip, know that you're in our thoughts and prayers right now, you and your family. And I hope you enjoy this video. I hope it puts a smile on your face when you see what I did with this little thing. Yeah, the wheels definitely helped. Unfortunately, the hook in the back hides some of the detail in the back. You can see it when you look top down on it, but just from the angles I have here, you can't really see it that well. I did go over the back, the hook area and stuff with Nuln Oil just to give it a little more body. It was just a little too shiny originally. But thank you all for watching this video. Please check out the other builders in this. Thanks to my patrons. Thank you for all of your support. And you all stay safe and healthy out there. And I'll catch you in the next video.